Merino wool is one buzzword that you'll hear in practically every single travel packing video. But is it actually worth the hype and the price tag? Well, in this video, I'll be giving a detailed overview of the pros and cons of merino wool based on common myths and misconceptions that a lot of people get wrong. By the end of this video, you'll have all the knowledge you need to make an informed decision about whether or not merino wool makes sense for you. So let me know in the comments what conclusion you've come to. And be sure to share any experiences that you have already with merino wool. Now, in case you're new here, hi, I'm Christina from happytowander.com. And this channel is all about practical travel tips from someone who's been there, done that, so be sure to like and subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now, the first one is already going to be unexpected, and that's myth number 1, which is that merino wool is for everyone. And honestly, I think this is untrue. I'm getting this out of the way first because I don't want this video to seem like a hard sell. Like any material out there, merino wool has its pros and cons, and it's also not going to be suited to everyone, whether that's because of cost or just how the material feels on your skin, because every human is different. And depending on the type of trip that you have planned, honestly, you might not even need merino wool travel clothes. If you're just going to be sitting on the beach having a few beers, you're not going to need a high performance fabric like that. Or if you're doing just a one-day hike where packing light and doing laundry isn't going to be an issue, then there are probably other high-performance synthetic materials that will do the job just fine. But where this material really excels is situations where you want to get the most wear out of each item as possible. So perhaps instances where you might not have access to things like laundry or even the luxury of space in your bag. Like for instance, when you're packing light for travel. Merino wool is famously perfect for travel just because of specific properties it has, like the fact that it's odor and bacteria resistant, meaning you can get more wears out of it before washing. It's also wrinkle resistant, which makes it really good for packing and unpacking. And it has really great temperature regulating properties, which means it keeps you cool when you need it and also warm when you need it as well. So for me personally, merino wool has been as close as I've been able to find to a miracle fabric for my travel wardrobe. But it comes with a few big buts, and that brings us nicely to our next myth, which is that merino wool products are all amazing. And honestly, this one just isn't true. A huge issue that first-timers face is that if something is labeled as merino wool and it's expensive, they kind of just jump to the conclusion that it's going to be high quality and suitable for their purposes. But this just isn't true. Because the trouble is, when you hear the term merino wool, literally all that means is that it comes from a specific breed of sheep known as merino sheep. And so the term merino in and of itself isn't an indicator of quality. So when you're looking at merino wool products, you have to look beyond just the term merino and also look at specific things, like for instance, the composition. Is the product 100% merino wool, or is it perhaps a blend? Some companies can be really sneaky and they'll just put in like 40 or 50% merino wool, and then they'll still call it a merino product. The fabric weight is another really big one. This is usually measured by grams per square meter, and this is going to give you a better idea of the garment's thickness and also the way it drapes. Especially because so much shopping is done online these days, you do really need to pay attention to these details when you're looking at product pages, just because that's going to give you a better idea of what that garment's actually going to feel like, and also whether or not it's suitable for your intended purpose. Generally, 300 grams per square meter is considered heavy. Anything from 200 to 300 grams per square meter is considered medium, so good for kind of transitional seasons and wardrobes. And below 200 is considered light, so good for summer wear. Another thing to pay attention to is the fiber micron, which is the average diameter of one fiber in the garment. This is going to give you a better idea of how that specific piece of merino wool is going to feel on your skin. The finer the fiber micron, the softer the material feels. Between 16 to 19 is generally considered the softest and most luxurious merino wool that you can get for your clothes. Now, having tried many different merino wool products, I can safely say that quality does vary quite a lot in terms of how it feels on your skin and also how it holds up in a travel setting. So before we move on to our next myths, I'm going to tell you a bit about my go-to merino wool brand, which is Unbound Merino, also the sponsors of this week's video. All the products from this video, including this dress, are from them, and I'll be linking all the product pages in the description, along with a discount code so that you can save off of your first purchase. Now, what I love about Unbound Merino in particular is not only do they use ultra fine merino wool, which means their stuff is really, really soft, they also specialize in versatile garments that can be dressed up or down, which makes it perfect for not just a travel setting, but also day-to-day life. I've been wearing them constantly over the past 2 years in a variety of settings, from Christmas market base layers to just day-to-day city hopping. I've climbed mountains in them, I've eaten my fair share of local treats in them, And overall, I've just been so impressed with how well it holds up after multiple wears, and the fact that it doesn't smell after even multiple days is an absolute game changer. So if you're looking for a reliable and pretty stylish option that's Canadian just like me, then be sure to check out their full collection on their website, where you'll actually find quite a lot of bundle deals as well that are really great for savings if you want to start building your own merino wool capsule wardrobe. Alright, all that said, merino wool can't be perfect, right? There's surely downsides. Well, that is, of course, true of any material, and merino wool is not exempt from that. So that brings us to our next myth, which is that merino wool is expensive. This one is unfortunately true. And even when it comes to cheaper options for merino wool, a lot of the time they are more affordable for a reason, whether it's because they're using a coarser merino wool that doesn't feel as soft on the skin, or maybe they're blending that merino wool with other fabrics that bring the cost down. And yes, I get it, the sticker shock when it comes to merino wool products can be so real. I still remember my very first merino wool purchase, which was when I was a broke student, and it was a $30 pair of socks. And to me at that time, spending that much money on one pair of socks was unfathomable. I just couldn't believe that I was doing that. But you know what? Those socks lasted me years, whereas some of my cheaper ones just wore out after a year or two. And this really ties into something I've learned recently as someone who's been trying to make more of an active effort to avoid fast fashion. It's that sometimes paying more upfront for a high quality garment will actually save you money long term compared to buying just trendy items or things that are of a low quality. So while merino wool products aren't cheap by any means, something that kind of helps me is thinking of the cost per wear rather than just the upfront price tag. Because I tend to opt for plain and versatile merino wool options, these are the ones that I'll wear again and again, especially on trips when I'm packing light and traveling carry-on only. And so if I were to calculate the cost per wear of these tops compared to some of the more fashionable, cool looking tops that I've purchased in the past, honestly, I think the cost per wear would be way lower for these merino wool items just because I wear them so much. There are also other benefits that to me help justify the cost, things like time and comfort, for instance. Like you're not going to have to do laundry as often, you don't have to think as much about what you need to pack, and also you can't put a price on being able to regulate your temperature going from a hot metro car outside into cold winter Christmas market vibes, you know what I mean? So I do think that there are a lot of unique benefits, and in the end, that to me really does help justify the cost. Now, another big myth, or belief I should say, is that a lot of people think merino wool products are ugly. And this is one that I would classify as not true. Listen, I'm not gonna stand here and say that merino wool is ultra fashionable and ultra stylish, because the truth is there are just certain limitations when it comes to this material. It's just not capable of doing some things that other materials are, like holding up a very unique silhouette, for instance, or unique drapings. Designs also tend to be quite plain for a lot of different reasons as well. I mean, companies want them to be versatile so that you're able to get as much use out of them as possible. So that trade-off does exist, but I do think a lot of people just assume all merino wool clothes look like outdoorsy hiking gear, and that's just not the truth. These days, there are tons of casual options that are available out there that look clean and nice for day-to-day wear. And I'll say this, there's definitely ways to dress it up as needed. For me, whenever I'm wearing my merino wool stuff, I could easily just take a merino wool tank top, wear it with some shorts, and it'll be casual. But at the same time, you could take that same top, match it with a skirt, maybe add on a fun piece of jewelry, put on a fun jacket, and that completely transforms the outfit. And for me, this just makes sense when you're packing light for travel. I really like prioritizing things that can be dressed up or down rather than something that just has one explicit use, like a really sparkly dress, for instance. Now onto the next very common myth, which is that merino wool is itchy. This one isn't generally true, but it does depend on the garment and also on the person that's wearing it, because again, all humans are different. I will say this though, a lot of people do assume that merino wool is going to feel like your standard wool, like the scratchy sweaters that you grew up wearing as a kid. But that just isn't true. Merino wool is special specifically because of the fact that the wool can be woven in a way that's super soft and also more lightweight compared to other wools. And as I've said, like with a lot of my Unbound merino stuff, a lot of the time you can't even tell that it's wool at all. So definitely give it a chance. Don't just assume it's like all other wool products. Now, another huge myth is that merino wool is only good for winter travel. Not true. I will say merino wool has definitely made it into the mainstream as a base layer for winter travel and for hiking, but there are still a lot of people out there who think that wearing merino wool in the summer would be absolutely crazy. But as someone who has worn merino wool for the past 2 summers, I can definitely vouch for its effectiveness in warmer weather as well. Again, merino wool can be really great for keeping heat in, which is why it's so great as a base layer. But it also wears double duty as a breathable and moisture wicking fabric as well. And it does that by wicking sweat away from the body and then releasing all that moisture back into the air quickly so that you're able to stay dry. especially when I'm doing trips where I'm gonna be up to a lot of different varied activities, like I'm gonna be hiking one day and then just walking around a city in the other, because it is very versatile and can work for both. And again, because merino wool doesn't cling to odors like a lot of other materials, I can rewear the same top multiple times without needing to wash it, which has been so handy in the summer, especially for trips where you're expecting you're gonna sweat quite a bit. Admittedly though, merino wool is breathable, but it's not as breathable as certain fabrics like linen, for instance. So if you're doing a trip where you're not necessarily gonna need an item to not be washed multiple days in a row, let's say it's a short trip or you have access to laundry, then merino wool might not be the best option in the summer, but overall, just as a multi-purpose garment, you really can't beat it. Now this brings us to our next myth, which is that merino wool is simply a performance fabric and not something to be worn day to day. And as you can probably guess, I don't think this is true either. Often when people see the price of merino wool and also the way that it tends to be marketed, they assume, okay, this is a high performance fabric that's strictly meant for big things like expeditions, but to be honest, I don't really think this is the case. While merino wool can be a great performance fabric, my stance is that really what it's ideal for is what I call mildly sweaty endeavors, like travel for instance. Personally, merino wool wouldn't be my first choice if I'm doing something like a really long run, or if I'm doing a really sweaty cycling ride in the middle of the summer, which I wouldn't do anyway because I'm bad at bikes, but you get the point. And that's just because wool can take longer to dry compared to certain synthetic fabrics, so if you're just doing physical activity and that's the whole purpose of your trip, in certain situations it might be better to look into other high-performance synthetics. But for me, where it really shines is day-to-day use, where you might be sweating a little bit, let's say from walking, or maybe fluctuations in temperature, which are both obviously really common when you're traveling. So yes, pretty much all the items in my merino wool wardrobe are day-to-day things and not necessarily performance gear. And honestly, if you're paying this much for a garment, I personally think you want to get the most value for money out of it as possible, so why wouldn't you want to wear it in a lot of different settings? Now the next myth is that you need things that are 100% merino wool. Honestly, this isn't true. Yes, as I mentioned before, it is very important to actually inspect the label and look at the composition of the garment to see how much merino wool is actually included. But a lot of people go too far in this direction and assume you need 100% merino wool for everything, and they'll say that blends are bad and they'll villainize blends. But in reality, there are some instances when blends are actually necessary, because there are some things that merino wool as a material just can't really do very well on its own, like holding stretchiness, for instance. This is why a lot of the time when you find merino wool socks, they are going to be combined with other materials, and that's going to make it a bit more durable and a bit more resilient. Merino wool is also quite delicate compared to other materials, which is why sometimes mixing it with other materials is going to give it a longer lifespan. I will say though, for certain things like tops, I do prefer 100% merino wool because to me, I've noticed the mixed ones tend to be more susceptible to certain issues like pilling and wear and tear without the proper maintenance. So yes, don't ignore the composition label when you're shopping, but do keep in mind that sometimes when there's a blend, it can be for a reason. Now the next myth is that merino wool is high maintenance. And unfortunately, this one is true. The harsh truth is just buying merino wool isn't enough. You do actually have to wash and maintain it properly as well. As I've said before, merino wool can be quite delicate, and so this is one instance where you don't want to be ignoring the wash label in regards to what you're allowed to do with it or not, because trust me, this stuff is so expensive that you do not want to wash it in the wrong setting and completely ruin it, which is unfortunately something I have done in the past. So yes, washing it in hot water, using fabric softener, or tumble drying are all things that can contribute to your pricey merino wool item wearing down sooner rather than later. There are also some rules of thumb that just aren't immediately obvious to first-timers. Like for instance, you're supposed to turn your socks inside out before you wash them, which is something I did not know for a very long time. You should also be drying the items flat and also airing them out between wears to really maximize the anti-odor properties. All in all, merino wool is amazing, but it does require quite a bit of thought and effort to make the most of it. So if you're looking for something that's really low maintenance that you can just throw around, it might not be the best fit. Now onto our final myth, which is that merino wool is magical and flawless. And obviously that isn't true. There is no material in the world that is perfect. And I say this as someone who absolutely loves merino wool. Oftentimes it feels like people overstate the benefits of merino wool to the point where it sets up some really unrealistic expectations. So let me make a few things clear. Merino wool is odor resistant, but it is not odor free. You cannot get away with never washing it. It does need to be washed eventually. All it does is extend kind of the lifespan between washes, but do make sure you are still washing your clothes. Merino wool is also wrinkle resistant, but it's not wrinkle free. Like, you couldn't say scrunch it up in your bag for 3 months and then take it out and expect it to have no wrinkles. That's just not realistic, but it is fairly resistant to wrinkles in the short term, which makes it really great for packing and unpacking in travel. Merino wool is also resilient in the sense that it holds up well between washes, but if you treat it recklessly and you just launder it as you would any other material, then do be aware that because the fibers are so fine, it is very delicate. So if you're going to be throwing it in the laundry every day or treating it like you would any other garment, you're going to start seeing holes sooner than compared to, for instance, a cotton shirt. So do keep that in mind. These clothes are expensive and you need to treat them as such. Overall, of course, merino wool isn't perfect, nothing is, but for my purposes, it's about as close to perfect as I can find. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. If you've had any experiences, please feel free to share them, and be sure to use the code Christina10 for 10% off your first purchase with Unbound Merino. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!